transition from physical life to the spiritual realm is not unlike awakening from a dream. When consciousness departs from the physical vessel, there is often a moment of profound clarity, a sudden understanding that transcends all earthly limitations. In my years of spiritual guidance, I have encountered countless testimonies from those who've experienced near-death experiences. They describe this initial transition as gentle, like floating upward through layers of consciousness. The soul, no longer constrained by physical matter, experiences an immediate expansion of awareness. Consider the case of Michael, a man who clinically died for 7 minutes during cardiac surgery. The first sensation, he told me, was of immense relief, as if I'd been wearing tight, uncomfortable clothing my entire life and suddenly could breathe freely. This sensation is what many experience in those initial moments, a release from physical constraints. The research of Edgar once described this moment as the birth of the soul into the spiritual realm. Just as a newborn must adjust to the physical world, the newly transitioned soul must acclimate to the spiritual dimension. During this initial phase, the soul often finds itself observing its former body from above. This experience creates what some call the confusion of duality, still identifying with the physical form while simultaneously existing beyond it. Many souls report witnessing medical personnel attempting resuscitation, family members grieving, or the peaceful stillness of their abandoned physical vessel. What's fascinating is how the soul's expectations and beliefs shape this experience. Those who held strong convictions about an afterlife often report seeing exactly what they anticipated, whether that's a tunnel of light, spiritual guides, or religious figures. This suggests that consciousness creates its own initial reality during transition. The first hours after physical death are particularly significant. The soul begins to realize it is no longer bound by physical laws. Time, space, and matter no longer limit experience. This can be disorienting or liberating, depending on the soul's spiritual development. For those who've lived with awareness of their spiritual nature, this transition often feels like a homecoming. For those deeply attached to physical existence or who denied spiritual realities, there may be confusion or resistance. Some souls initially don't even realize they've transitioned, attempting to communicate with loved ones who cannot perceive them. The physical sensations of the body are replaced by energetic sensations. Pain dissolves, but emotional states intensify. Whatever emotional condition existed at the moment of transition, peace, fear, love, regret, becomes amplified in these early hours. What many don't realize is that the transitioning soul experiences a profound silence in those initial moments. After a lifetime of constant physical sensation, heartbeats, breathing, ambient sounds, there is a cosmic quiet that allows the soul to hear its own essence for perhaps the first time. The guardians or guides who meet the soul during this transition are often those with whom there was significant connection during physical life. These may be beloved family members who transitioned earlier, spiritual teachers, or beings specifically assigned to assist with this passage. Their presence provides comfort during what could otherwise be a disorienting experience. The soul's vibrational frequency determines much about these initial experiences. Those who lived with love, compassion, and spiritual awareness typically transition into realms of similar vibration. Those whose lives were dominated by lower vibrational states may initially find themselves in darker, heavier realms that reflect their consciousness. By the second and third days after transition, the soul becomes more accustomed to its new state of being. This is when most souls fully enter what many spiritual traditions call the astral plane, a dimension that exists between the physical world and higher spiritual realms. This intermediate zone serves as a vital staging area for the soul's journey. The astral plane appears differently to each soul, reflecting their inner state and spiritual development. Some perceive it as a luminous landscape with colors beyond physical perception. Others experience it as familiar environments from their earthly life, but subtly transformed, more vibrant, more fluid, responding to thought in ways physical matter never could. A woman named Sarah, who was revived after a near-fatal accident, described her experience. Everything around me seemed made of light, not just illuminated, but actually composed of light that was somehow solid yet flowing, and I could feel the emotions of this place as tangible sensations. B prime, it is during this phase that most souls begin the profound process of life review. Unlike our earthly recollections, this review unfolds as a multidimensional experience where the soul not only witnesses its actions, but feels their impact on others. Every kindness, every hurt inflicted, every opportunity taken or missed, all are experienced from both perspectives simultaneously. This life review serves not as judgment but as profound understanding. The soul sees the complete tapestry of its existence, the patterns, the lessons, the growth. Nothing is hidden. The soul witnesses its own journey with complete transparency. This process typically begins gradually, focusing first on major life events before expanding to include seemingly minor moments that carried significant spiritual impact. What many find surprising is that during this review, the most meaningful moments are rarely those of worldly achievement. Instead, simple acts of compassion, moments of genuine connection, and instances where love was chosen over fear stand out with luminous significance. The emotional intensity of this review can be overwhelming for souls unprepared for such radical honesty. Yet it's important to understand that this process occurs within a field of unconditional love. The soul is not being punished, but rather being shown the truth of its journey for the purpose of growth and understanding. During this phase, many souls report encountering what could be called a council of elders, wise beings who assist in interpreting the life review. These are not judges, but compassionate guides who help the soul understand the deeper patterns and purposes behind its earthly experiences. The astral plane also allows for healing of traumatic transitions. Those who experienced violent or sudden deaths are given time and support to process their transition. Souls who left with unresolved attachments or who didn't have time to prepare for their transition receive special assistance during this period. What's particularly fascinating is how time operates differently in this realm. What might feel like hours to the soul could be days in earthly time, or what seems like a brief moment might encompass what would be weeks in physical reality. This fluidity of time allows for the deep processing that the soul requires. Many souls report that during this phase, they become increasingly aware of the thoughts and emotions of loved ones still in physical form. Prayers, loving thoughts, and ceremonies honoring the departed are perceived as waves of energy reaching the soul. Conversely, excessive grief can sometimes create energetic ties that temporarily bind the soul closer to the earth plane, making it more difficult to progress through the natural stages of transition. The astral plane also serves as a place of reunion. Souls often encounter beloved family members, friends, and even spiritual companions from previous incarnations. These reunions provide immense comfort and joy, helping the soul adjust to its new reality and remember its larger spiritual family beyond the relationships of the most recent lifetime. By the end of this phase, the soul has typically gained a clearer understanding of its completed life journey and begins to sense the next phase of its spiritual evolution. The life review creates a foundation of self-knowledge that prepares the soul for the choices and paths that lie ahead in its continuing journey. By the 4th and 5th days following transition, the soul enters what might be called a phase of spiritual reorientation. Having processed the immediate shock of transition and undergone the initial life review, the soul now begins to reawaken to its broader spiritual identity, reconnecting with aspects of itself that transcend any single lifetime. This is a profound period of remembering. The soul starts to recall its spiritual origins, previous incarnations, and the larger purpose that has guided its journey across multiple lifetimes. It's as if veils are being lifted, revealing a vastly expanded identity beyond the personality of the most recent incarnation. One hospice nurse who had a profound near-death experience during surgery described this phase. "I began to remember who I truly was. Not just the woman who had lived for 56 years, but a much vaster being. It was like remembering a home I'd forgotten I had, and recognizing that my earthly identity was just one role I had played in a much larger story." During this phase, many souls report experiencing what spiritual traditions have called the silver cord, an energetic connection to the physical body that fully dissolves around this time, completing the separation from earthly existence. With this final release, the soul's perception expands dramatically. The emotional texture of this phase is often described as bittersweet. There is joy in the remembrance of one's larger identity and reunions with soul companions, yet there may also be a poignant recognition of opportunities missed during the earthly sojourn. However, this recognition comes without judgment, only compassion and understanding. It is typically during this phase that souls encounter what many traditions call the portal of decision. This is a pivotal moment where the soul, having integrated the lessons of its recent incarnation and reconnected with its broader identity, must choose its next phase of spiritual development. For some souls, this means preparing for another incarnation to continue specific lessons or fulfill spiritual commitments. For others, it means advancing to higher vibrational realms for further spiritual development before considering reincarnation. And for souls who have completed their cycle of earthly incarnations, it means moving toward what some traditions call the final integration with source consciousness. What's remarkable about this portal of decision is that it represents genuine spiritual free will. While guides and higher beings may offer counsel, the ultimate choice belongs to the soul itself, based on its own wisdom and understanding of what it needs next. The environment the soul experiences during this phase often shifts to reflect this process of decision-making. Many report seeing symbolic landscapes, crossroads, doorways, or bridges that represent the different paths available. Others describe being shown potential future incarnations or spiritual paths as living holograms they can step into and briefly experience before making their choice. During this phase, the soul's connection with earthbound loved ones begins to naturally transform. While still aware of those left behind, the soul increasingly turns its attention toward its continuing spiritual journey. This doesn't represent abandonment, but rather a natural evolution, like a child who loves their parents, but must eventually leave home to fulfill their own purpose. The vibrational frequency of the soul continues to refine during this period. The denser energies associated with physical existence, fear, attachment, identification with form, gradually dissolve as the soul acclimates to spiritual existence. This refinement allows access to increasingly subtle realms of consciousness. For souls who lived lives of exceptional service, compassion, and spiritual awareness, this phase may include what some traditions call the blessing of the masters, an encounter with highly evolved spiritual beings who acknowledge the soul's growth and contributions. This blessing carries profound spiritual significance for the soul's continuing journey. What many don't realize is that time spent in this phase varies greatly depending on the soul's development and needs. Some souls move through it relatively quickly, while others may spend what would be equivalent to weeks or months in earth time processing and preparing for their next phase. By the conclusion of this period, the soul has typically reached clarity about its next step and begins preparations for whatever path it has chosen, whether that means integration into higher spiritual realms or preparation for another earthly incarnation. This decision establishes the trajectory for the next phase of the soul's eternal journey. As the soul approaches the seventh day after transition, it enters what many spiritual traditions have called the crystallization of purpose. This final phase of the initial post-transition journey represents a profound consolidation of everything the soul has experienced, remembered, and decided. The seventh day carries special significance across many spiritual traditions, and this is reflected in the soul's journey as well. It marks a completion of the initial adjustment period and the beginning of the soul's next great adventure. The energy during this time is often described as both serene and dynamic, a peaceful certainty combined with eager anticipation. A hospice chaplain who experienced clinical death during heart surgery described this phase. There was a sense of everything falling into perfect alignment. The lessons of my life, my larger purpose, my next steps, all of it crystallized into a perfect knowing. I felt completely at peace with what had been and completely ready for what was to come. For souls who have chosen to reincarnate, this phase involves what might be called blueprint creation, working with spiritual guides to design the circumstances, relationships, and key lessons of their next incarnation. This is not predetermined fate, but rather a framework of potentials and probabilities designed to offer the soul its chosen growth opportunities. Those who have decided to advance to higher spiritual realms without immediate reincarnation experience what some call vibrational ascension, a literal rising of their energetic frequency that allows access to more refined dimensions of consciousness. This process can be experienced as moving through layers of light, each more brilliant and expansive than the last. For souls who have completed their cycle of incarnations, this phase marks the beginning of their integration with higher aspects of consciousness, what some traditions call returning to the source, or becoming one with the divine. This is not an ending, but a magnificent expansion, like a drop of water returning to the ocean while retaining the essence of all it has experienced. What's particularly beautiful about this phase is how the soul's relationship with loved ones, both those who have passed on and those still in physical form, transforms into something transcendent. The connections remain, but they evolve beyond the limitations of personality and circumstance into expressions of pure, unconditional love. During this time, many souls report experiencing what could be called the cosmic perspective, an expansive view of existence that reveals the perfect unfolding of all creation. From this vantage point, even the most difficult experiences of earthly life are seen as valuable aspects of the soul's evolution, and the intricate interconnection of all beings becomes unmistakably clear. The guardians and guides who have accompanied the soul through its transition now take on new roles appropriate to the soul's chosen path. For those reincarnating, these beings will continue as guides from the other side during the upcoming lifetime. For those ascending to higher realms, these beings often serve as initiators into new dimensions of spiritual experience. What many don't realize is that souls who have formed strong spiritual connections during physical life often coordinate their transitions to higher realms or their next incarnations. Soul groups, beings who have traveled together through many lifetimes, frequently synchronize their journeys to continue supporting each other's evolution. By the end of the 7th day, the soul typically completes its initial transition journey. The confusion, attachment, and orientation to physical existence have been replaced by clarity, freedom, and alignment with spiritual reality. The soul now stands at the threshold of its next great adventure, fully prepared to continue its eternal journey. For those who have chosen reincarnation, there may be a period of preparation before the actual rebirth, sometimes brief, sometimes extending much longer, depending on the soul's needs and the earthly circumstances required for its next life. During this preparation, the soul may visit the earth plane to connect with future parents or significant others who will be part of its coming lifetime. For those advancing to higher spiritual realms, the 7th day marks the beginning of experiences so transcendent that they can scarcely be described in human language. These realms of pure consciousness, creative force, and divine love represent levels of existence that the human mind can only glimpse through deep meditation or mystical experience. What all souls discover, regardless of their chosen path, is that the journey never ends. Consciousness continues its evolution eternally, moving ever toward greater expression, greater love, and greater unity. Death is revealed not as an ending, but as a transition point in the magnificent eternal adventure of the soul. In the words of an ancient spiritual text, what appears as an ending to those bound by time is but a doorway to those who dwell in eternity. The soul's journey after death reveals this truth in all its profound simplicity and breathtaking beauty. If this exploration of the soul's journey resonated with you, take a moment to subscribe to our channel. Each subscription supports more content that illuminates the deeper mysteries of existence. Share your thoughts or personal experiences in the comments below. Your perspective may provide comfort and insight to others on their own spiritual journey. Remember, by engaging with this community, you help create a space for meaningful spiritual conversation in our increasingly disconnected world. Subscribe now and join us as we continue to explore the profound truths that connect us all.